Question. When we choose words, what are we doing differently from the Wahhabis? Yani, we're talking about the words that refer to the attributes of Allah. We say knowledge and power and will, and a Wahhabi would say knowledge and power and will. And we say yad and ayn and wajh. And a Wahhabi would say in Arabic yad and ayn and wajh. So what's the difference? It is important to know the difference between agreement in expression, and agreement in meaning. While Wahhabis say the meaning is the same, but the degree is different. Yani, the meaning is the same, but we don't know how it is. That's what they mean. We say only the expression is the same, not the meaning, and the meaning is absolutely different. So when we choose words, we're choosing them with one meaning for Allah and another meaning for the creation. When they choose words, they're choosing the same meaning for Allah and the creation. That's what we're doing differently here. Similarity between two things does not always take place by merely using the same expression. It's not because you're using the same word that means that you're drawing a similarity or making a comparison or making two things of the same type. That's what the Wahhabi thinks. Really, the Wahhabi thinks Allah is like the creation, and he doesn't know what it means to say Allah is not like anything. That's why he says Allah has eyes and face and hands, and it has the same meaning as the creation. And then when we say no, it doesn't have the same meaning as creation, you're being literal there, and that likens Allah to the creations. He would say, but you say he has knowledge and will and power. So it's like he's saying, but you do it too. You do liken Allah to the creations like we do, but you're just denying it. That's basically what he's saying. He's saying, you compare Allah to the creations too, but you're denying it. It's like he's saying, we compare Allah to the creations, but we're being consistent. You compare Allah to the creations and you're denying it. Similarity between two things does not always take place by merely using the same expression. For example, we say that Allah exists and the creatures exist, but this agreement and expression does not necessitate that he resembles them, since his existence is without a body, soul, time, or place. His existence is not suitable for the creations, and theirs is not suitable for him. That's an important answer right there. His existence is not suitable for the creations, and theirs is not suitable for him. Had they been similar, then what would have been suitable for one would have been suitable for the other, because that's the meaning of similarity, according to us. We say, regardless of the argument of any philosopher or God comparer, any philosopher or any pagan, for us, according to our scholars, similarity between two things is when one thing can replace the other. Similarity between two things is when one thing can replace the other. That's what makes them similar. So when we say Allah exists and the creations exist, that doesn't mean they're similar, because the existence of Allah is not suitable for the creations. It's not applicable to the creations. And the existence of the creations is not suitable for or applicable to Allah. So this existence and that existence are not interchangeable. So they're not similar. You say, for example, Sam and Fred are both judges. Sam and Fred are both judges. So then one can replace the other. But maybe Sam, he knows how to swim and Fred doesn't know how to swim. So then in that case, they're not similar because one cannot replace the other. So if we needed a swimmer and if we needed a judge, and then there was Sam and Fred, both of them are judges, then we can take either one and put them in the position of the judge because they're similar here. But if we needed a swimmer, then we can only take the one who can swim. The other one's not suitable here. He doesn't fit. So they're not similar. In that way, they're not similar. So take that, the difference between agreement in expression and agreement in meaning. And the same is said about the other attributes of Allah. Question: if we both verbally agree, we means Sunnis and Wahhabis, we both verbally agree that yad and wajh are attributes, for example, and ayn and istiwa, then how is there any debate? Why are we arguing here? Aren't we saying the same thing? If they ask, what made it acceptable for you to say that his hearing, sight, and speech are different from the creations? We respond, as previously mentioned, it is true that the expression is the same, but the meaning is different. For his sight is without pupils, his hearing is without ears, and his speech is without letters or sounds. We oppose the Wahhabis not because they confirm yad, ayn, and wajh. That's not where the argument is, that they confirm those. We oppose them because they do not deny that Allah has hands and face according to the apparent meanings. That's different. That's something completely different. They said he has face and hands according to the apparent meaning. And on purpose, they say, according to the apparent meaning. I'm not adding that. We're not adding that part just to highlight it. They say that. They say, ala al-haqiqah, ala al-zahir, according to the apparent meaning, literally. They say we must take those attributes as they are without looking for other linguistic meanings. We, Ahlul Sunnah, say we must believe in the attributes that are mentioned in the Quran and the Sunnah. That's true. But any attribute that would seem to imply physical meaning is not taken by its apparent meaning. They don't agree with that. And they don't care that it seems to imply a physical meaning. That doesn't concern them. They're not concerned with that because they don't really distinguish Allah from his creations. So that thing that concerns us, it does not concern them. It concerns us that an expression would be giving Allah physical attributes. It does not concern them that an expression would be giving Allah physical attributes. So some expressions, they do not give Allah a physical attribute. And some expressions, they seem to. They could in the language be giving Allah, by some way of the language, a physical meaning. But also in the language, they don't have to be giving Allah a physical meaning. These very same expressions we're talking about. They could be giving Allah physical meaning some way in the language, but also the very same words, they could be not giving Allah a physical meaning. So since we're concerned about giving Allah a physical meaning, we don't want to do that, then we're avoiding interpreting anything in a way that gives Allah any physical meaning. That does not concern Wahhabi. He doesn't care about that part. So he doesn't mind to argue with you and say to you, how could you say Allah is not any place? We know where he is. He doesn't care that he's attributing physical location to Allah. Therefore, if one of them were to say that Allah has hands, face, and eyes that are not organs, nor pieces, and are not dimensional or physical, so here, this is a case. What if one of them said, Allah has face, hands, and eyes that are not organs, and they're not pieces, and they're not dimensions, and they're not physical, although Wahhabis don't say that. But just so that we can take the discussion to all of its ends, to all of its offshoots, what if he did say that? What would be the answer? What if he says, hands, face, eyes, not organs or pieces, not dimensions, not physical? Then, if this is truly his understanding, he agreed with us, but in meaning. He agreed with us in meaning. Because it's like he's saying, Allah has attributes that are not dimensions. They're not dimensional. They're not physical. They're not organs. They're not pieces. But he thinks that those attributes are called hands, face, and eyes. So in meaning, he's agreeing with us, not an expression. And you'll see some words like this in some Sunni translations. I would argue when those are not very proficient, very strong and meticulous in the creed, they have right belief, but they're not very strong in that, they would translate those words literally like Reliance of the Traveler. I don't know if it's been updated. Reliance of the Traveler by Nuh Keller says in there, hands, face, eyes, for example. Now I don't remember exactly. But he says that. He translates those words. But the explanation is correct. The explanation is correct. So we don't do that. We don't agree with that. Upon that, we only object to his translations. His translations that give the false impression that Allah has organs. We then advise him to stick to the Arabic and to explain to the people that those Arabic words as attributes of Allah are not to be taken by their apparent meanings. Question: which hadith is recommended for refuting the Wahhabi creed? For the honorable sayings of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we recite the hadith named the Hadith of Imran ibn Husayn. كان الله ولم يكن شيء غيره. Allah existed eternally, and there was nothing other than him. Not only is this an extremely basic and easy to understand proof, but it is exceedingly strong evidence against them. It proves with very little thinking that Allah was eternally alone. There was no arsh, sky, body, place, direction, light, darkness, nor anything else. But for a Wahhabi, his mind cannot separate Allah from a place because he has retardation. Question: how do you use this hadith? To use this hadith effectively, you must understand the meaning of qidam or azaliyah, eternality, being without a beginning. We ask that Wahhabi, but without the intention to make him say blasphemy, is a place something other than Allah? Yani, you produce the hadith. Kan Allahu wa lam yakun shay'un ghayruh. Allah was and there wasn't anything else. Is the place something other than him? Is Allah a place or something else? Is the place Allah or something else? We produce the hadith. Kan Allahu wa lam yakun shay'un ghayruh. Allah was and there wasn't anything else. And then we'll ask him, is the place Allah or something else? But we're asking him not with the intention to make him say blasphemy. That's really obvious though. We're not asking him so that he would say blasphemy. But we need to put this sentence here because some people are not clear about what it means to not ask your opponent something that makes him say kufr. We'll explain it when we get to it, inshallah ta'ala. It's in the book, alhamdulillah. So this is to either get the right answer out of him or to silence him, not to make him say kufr. He can give three possible responses. One, he will most likely ignore your question entirely. He will most likely ignore your question entirely. Instead of answering, he would ask you a different question or change the subject or claim that you are changing the subject. He would say something like, this question is irrelevant. And then he'll try to squeeze out of there. If he does any of those, do not answer him. If he asks you something instead of answering you, do not answer him. If he tries to go into another subject, do not follow him into another subject. But staying on point and not being distracted may require practice and concentration. So always do it, always. When you ask someone a question, right? Know what type of question you're asking. Are you asking a question that requires yes or no? Or are you asking a question that requires an answer? You're asking a question that requires a particular sentence as the answer? But for example, what if the question were, do you like ice cream or do you like chicken? So then the answer, for example, would be ice cream, or the answer would be chicken, or the answer would be neither, for example. But the question itself is limited to certain answers. So when you ask a question, then know what the answer should be to the question. When I say what the answer should be, I mean what I think it's clear for you what I mean here. Not saying what he's supposed to be answering, that he should be answering what you want him to answer. That's not what that means. It means your question, is it a question that requires the answer to be yes or no? Or is it a question that requires the answerer to pick an option? Pick an option, this one or that one? Or is it a question that just requires some open elaboration to be clarified? So know what you're asking and know what the answer should be, and then you don't accept anything but the answer. Nothing but the answer. For me, if I ask a person a question and the answer is yes or no, then it doesn't matter to me anything you say. Because if I don't hear yes or no, then I'm just going to ask you again or the like. So staying on point and not being distracted may require practice and concentration. For example, if you watch how some interviewers would interview a politician, or even if you watch how some people debate on some programs, a person would ask his opponent a question, or the interviewer would ask the politician a question, and then the politician wouldn't answer, or the opponent wouldn't answer. And then the person would try to keep him, say, but here's the question though. And then he might, let's say, even try again, but here's the question though. But most of the time, the one who doesn't want to answer that question, he manages to get out of there and then make the one who's asking him ask a new question. So they literally will leave the question unanswered. So for me, that's a horrible interviewer and that's a horrible debater. And if you want to see someone who has very strong slippery tactics, has very strong slippery tactics, the press secretary, United States press secretary, this black woman. So she, I think she make it her point to not answer your question. And no matter what you do, she will not answer your question. So take a look at that, find some of those, you'll see. She will not answer the question. That's how Wahhabis are. If you're talking with someone like that, you have to be able to not let them get away. Don't let them change the subject on you. Stick to the hadith and do not let him get away, even if you have to repeat the question again and again. If he claims that you are changing the subject, then you'll have to slightly digress. Just to prove that your question is relevant. Say, no, but you're changing this. That's not the point. So then here, you're going to make a little room for yourself only to show why what you're saying is relevant. But don't let them change the subject. Don't let them get out of there. If it's me, I will just end the discussion. I'm not going to give you an opportunity to get another question out of me before you answer my last question. I might have mentioned for you before, when someone called me to talk to someone who started going with Christians. Maybe he grew up as Muslim, I don't know, but he started going with the Christians. So they said, talk to him. So I was talking to him. So I said to him, if God said that something is valid, is it valid? So what's the answer to that? It's either a yes or no. Linguistically, I mean. Of course, the real answer is yes, but I mean, just from the perspective of language, the question is set up for the answer to only be yes or no. So when I asked him, if God said something is valid, then is it valid? So what did he say? He said, who's God? Okay, that's a different question. We can come back to that. But this is my question here. If God said something is valid, is it valid then? He said, who's God? Again. And he would not answer the question. And I told him, if you're not going to answer this question, I'm not going to continue this conversation with you. So what did he say? He said, okay. This means he's not going to answer the question. So, okay, I'm not going to waste my time with you. I got other things I could be doing. So if he claims that you're changing the subject, then you will have to slightly digress just to prove that your question is relevant. Then immediately get back to your original focus. Repeat yourself even if he gets mad that you are repeating the question. Is it place something other than Allah? If he refuses to answer, it is because he understands, but he is stubborn. He does not want to be cornered. He doesn't care about the truth here. Because if he cared about the truth, then he will just answer you, for example. He would say, well, no, it's not Allah, because he wants to get to the bottom of it. But if he doesn't care about that, then he's not going to answer you. The dishonest person cares about winning a debate, not about conforming to the truth. The second thing is that if he says that the place is Allah, which we do not expect him to say, then he is an idiot, and he's a clown, and he's a donkey who committed pure, explicit, and blatant blasphemy. Most likely, he will never say that, and our question is not to get this answer. And if he says that the place is something other than Allah, then say, okay, the place is other than Allah. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said Allah existed and there was nothing other than him. You just agreed that the place is something other than him. So this hadith then proves clearly that Allah existed without a place. If the Wahhabi says that was then and this is now, meaning that Allah is now in a place, then he likened Allah to the creations. That's clear because he attributed change to Allah. Because they really, really believe in likening Allah to the creations. Yani, this debate we're having here is not simply a difference in words. We're not picking on these people merely. We don't worship the same thing. So if he said that, you now need to explain to him what it means to exist without a beginning, and that whatever has no beginning does not change. He doesn't even understand that. Most basic principles of creed. Because the Wahhabis don't teach this type of talk. They don't talk about that if something has no beginning, it doesn't change. They just believe that Allah is in a place and he moves around and he has body parts. And that's it. They don't care about anything more than that. And soon we will see that the scholars of the Salaf denied that Allah changes. So we should take a look at Tahawi explanation done by some Wahhabis. How did they explain when Imam al-Tahawi said, مَا زَالَ بِصِفَاتِهِ قَدِيمًا قَبْلَ خَلْقِهِ, etc. That statement of al-Tahawi that means Allah doesn't change and that he didn't get an attribute that he didn't have in eternity by creating the creation. If we look in there and see what did the Wahhabi say, if he explained that part right, then it means that he just contradicts his own aqidah. This is why the scholar said, if someone says that Allah is in a place, he's either saying that Allah has created or that place is eternal. Yani, because either he's saying Allah has created so that he could be in a created place, or that the place is eternal so that the eternal could be there. If Allah has created, then someone created him. And if place is eternal, then he did not create it. How absurd. The Wahhabis don't care about all of that. If a Wahhabi heard that, so to him, the answer to that is basically, whatever. Doesn't care. The scholars also said that if someone says that God is a body, he is either saying that God is a creation or that bodies are eternal. Same thing. They also said that the body worshippers have no way to prove that the world is created. Whatever they say to prove that the world is created will be applicable to their description of God. How would they say the world's created? How could they explain to someone that the world is created? We explain the world is created because things are changing in the world. There are bodies that have sizes because they're made of particles and they move from place to place, or they're still in their places, and etc., etc., etc. And based on all of that, then we knew, yani, at the end of this deduction here, then we knew that the world is created. So a Wahhabi is unable to do anything like that because whatever he says to prove that the world is created, whatever he says rationally, yani, he's going to use an ayah from the Quran. Otherwise, he doesn't have anything. The body worshippers have no way to prove that the world is created. Whatever they say to prove that the world is created will be applicable to their description of God. Question: do the Wahhabis try to explain the difference between what is eternal and what is created? To elaborate on this issue for them, they selected the books of their grandfather, Ibn Taymiyyah. However, in his attempt to rationalize how the creator could have created attributes, how the eternal creator could have created attributes, he wound up claiming that types of things exist eternally with Allah. And the Wahhabis, they really took this from Ibn Taymiyyah. Just some of them, they're not at the level, though. They don't know about this talk. They don't know about this issue. So they're not at this level. But some Wahhabis, they do know this talk, and they have taken this from Ibn Taymiyyah. And one of them, I just recently, like last week, I went back and forth with him in the YouTube chat, in the comment section. I was telling you about him, that one who claimed that the Ash'ari said that the indivisible particle doesn't have a size. I was telling you about that guy. That same one, he said in some of his comments to people, I take what Ibn Taymiyyah said. He said, I agree with Ibn Taymiyyah when Ibn Taymiyyah said that the hadith of Imran ibn Hussein, the right one is to say that Allah existed and there was nothing before him. Allah existed and there was nothing before him. He said, I agree with Ibn Taymiyyah to selecting this version of the hadith to say nothing existed before Allah. So too, why? Because he wants to say, but as for something existing with him eternally, that's valid, according to him. He took that from Ibn Taymiyyah by his own words. So that you know, there are Wahhabis who took this from Ibn Taymiyyah. It's not just that he said it and then they don't take it. So in his attempt to rationalize how the creator could have created attributes, Ibn Taymiyyah, he wound up claiming that types of things exist eternally with Allah. By types of things, that's the key word here, types of things. He does not mean that anything in particular was always existing with Allah, but that there was always some kind of creation, some type of creation existing in the unending past. Before that one, there was another one. And before that one, there was another one. Like some kind of throne or another, some kind of throne for Allah to sit on or another one, or for Allah to be over, some throne or another throne for Allah to be over. There was always some kind of creation with him for Allah to sit upon it eternally. Before that one, there was another one. He said in his book, Minhaju Sunnati Nabawiyyah, وَإِنْ جَازَ أَنْ يَكُونَ نَوْعُ الْحَوَادِثِ دَائِمًا لَمْ يَزَلْ. He said, although it is valid that the creations in their kind would be forever beginningless, فَإِنَّ الْأَزَلَ لَيْسَ هُوَ عِبَارَةً عَنْ شَيْءٍ مُحَدَّدٍ. He says, because eternity is not an expression of something specific. بَلْ مَا مِنْ وَقْتٍ يُقَدَّرْ إِلَّا وَقَبْلَهُ وَقْتٌ آخَرٍ. Instead, there is no moment of time that could be estimated, but that before it, there was another moment. Right there, he says, مَا مِنْ وَقْتٍ يُقَدَّرْ إِلَّا وَقَبْلَهُ وَقْتٌ آخَرٍ. So he's saying something other than Allah is eternal. There was no time estimated. There's no supposed or estimated time, but that before it, there was another time. So that means, and before that one, there was another time. And before that one, there was another time. And before that one, there was another time. Before that moment, there was another moment. Before that moment, there was another moment. So that means forever, without a beginning, something other than Allah has no beginning. But according to him, it's a kind of thing and not a thing in particular. It seems that their grandest scholar, Ibn Taymiyyah, does not know that time is a creation of Allah, and hence was preceded by non-existence. And if that expression of Ibn Taymiyyah is not clear enough, if you think that there's a misunderstanding here being attributed to Ibn Taymiyyah, here is his statement from his book, Muwafaqatu Sahih al-Manqul li Sarih al-Ma'qul. He said, فَإِنَّ الْأَزَلِيَّ هُوَ نَوْعُ الْحَادِثِ لَا عَيْنُ الْحَادِثِ. Certainly, what is eternal is the type of the creation, not the created thing itself. Thus, if it were said to him that attributing a place to Allah means that he changed, he would respond, no, actually the place as a type of thing is beginningless. He could respond. This is his madhab here. This is the door he opened for himself to be able to argue. If it were said to him, well, if he's in a place means he changed, then he'd say, no, Because before that place, there was another place. He would say a place as a kind of thing, as a type of thing, is beginningless. And so Allah was always in some kind of place. Before that place, there was another. And before that place, there was another. This is the creed of Ibn Taymiyyah and his Wahhabi followers. Yani those who know this case. Other Wahhabis don't even know this case. This is an advanced Wahhabi here. It is indubitably shirk. And whoever believes it is not a Muslim. He has contradicted the verse of the Quran, Huwa al-awwal. He is al-awwal, who existed before everything. And as for that person that I was just telling you about, talking to him was so easy, because once he got to this point that he's talking about indivisible particles and what exists without a beginning, then although he didn't get there safely, it means he has some level or type of comprehension. So what did the scholars say? They said, when I debate with an ignorant person, I lose. And when I debate with a knowledgeable person, I win. So that one, he reached a point where he can't argue because he knows what I'm saying to him. He understands what I'm saying to him. Other ones, they might understand, they're so stubborn, or they don't understand. They're not trying to understand. This one, he could understand what I was saying to him. He knows he has no way to argue with me. He didn't put up a big fight at all. He just went silent. He has contradicted the verse of the Quran, Huwa al-awwal. Allah is al-awwal, who existed before everything. We say, types do not exist without their individual units. Yani, we're answering this issue of beginningless kinds. Types or kinds do not exist without their individual units. If there is no individual shoe in a room, for example, then nothing of that type exists in that room. If there were no humans, then mankind does not exist. In other words, saying that it's not the thing by itself that's eternal, it's its kind that's eternal. It doesn't make sense, because if there are no individual things that make up the kind, if there are no individual units that contribute to the kind, then the kind doesn't exist. So if all created things have a beginning, then every kind of created thing has to have a beginning. Now you understand that the Wahhabis believe that Allah moves from one place to another, but eternally in their own minds. Like they believe that Allah speaks Arabic. They believe that Allah says, like we say, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, but eternally. They don't know how he says Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. But they believe he does literally say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, but they don't know how he says that. Like that, they believe that Allah moves from one place to another, but that he does that eternally. In their minds, that makes sense. Though motion is not eternal, and that he speaks with successive letters and sentences, but eternally. Anything that has sequence and order is created, and it has a beginning after it was non-existent. Question: how is it known that we are created and not eternal? It is known by the fact that we change and develop. Those are the most obvious signs of the existence of God Almighty, the Creator and Lord, who changed us from fluid to blood clot to flesh clump, from newborn to senior citizen, from life to death, then back to life. No doubt about it. This is why Abu Hanifa said in Al-Fiqh al-Akbar, التغير والاختلاف يحدث عند المخلوقين. Changing and varying happens to the creations. And also, one of the most obvious signs that we're created is that we have edges. Anything that has an edge, that means it's created. Allah is not a creation, so no one gives him attributes. Ahlul Sunnah agreed that he does not give himself attributes, because whatever he creates is a creation. So if he gave himself attributes, means he creates himself. He creates attributes for himself. If he gave himself an attribute, he would have a created attribute. So Allah is eternal, and his attributes are eternal. Allah is not like us. He it is who changes things, and he does not change. This hadith, كَانَ اللَّهُ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ شَيْءٌ غَيْرُهُ, is an explicit one whose meaning cannot be played with. Use it against them and stick to it. Do not let them lead you away from it, as the more devious among them may intentionally try. They will really on purpose try to avoid your question. If you use it properly, there would be no way around it. This hadith. Question: is there a scholar from the Salaf who addressed this issue? Yes. That's the answer to the question. Imam al-Tahawi, a true Salafi, in his booklet famous as Al-Aqidatu al-Tahawiyah, said, مَا زَالَ بِصِفَاتِهِ قَدِيمًا قَبْلَ خَلْقِهِ. With his attributes, he never ceased to be without beginning before his creation. لم يزدد بكونهم شيئا لم يكن قبلهم من صفته. He did not acquire any attribute that did not exist before them. وكما كان بصفاته أزليا كذلك لا يزال عليها أبديا. And just as he, with his attributes, is without a beginning, likewise he, with his attributes, shall always be everlasting. Wallahu a'lam. Let's stop there.